Welcome everybody to another week, another time for us to be together. Today I'm in the tulips of Holland. My friend Denise is at a cafe outside in Paris, France. This is an opportunity for us to talk to you, to be encouraging to you. Denise, thanks so much for spending some time with me again today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Always. This is becoming kind of a Friday routine of ours. Hopefully it's something that's encouraging you as you walk into the weekend. We've covered a bunch of material over the last 2 months. Ways to manage our own anxiety, dealing with the roller coaster of a pandemic, and trying to manage trauma. Last week, we spent 20 minutes extra time talking about how to help kids of all age levels. Today, we want to talk about your relationships, and particularly your marriage, or if you're in a serious relationship with somebody. How do you stay together in a pandemic? And Denise is more equipped to talk about this than I am. I've been married for 12, going on 13 years. Denise, how long have you been married to your husband?
53 years.
So 53 years of experience. And how many couples have you counseled?
A lot. Probably over 25, 30 years. Yeah.
So you have a ton of experience around this. Let's just start with every marriage has a few things in common. And what do you say, would you say to the person who's a little bit anxious right now because they're hitting a rough patch in their marriage, or they're a little sick of their spouse after being together for, 50 straight days?
Yeah, I tell them not to take this, that they need to know all the answers. We really don't teach people very much how to be in a relationship. We see movies where people, like you said, just get together, or my age where they're going to be, sick or have Alzheimer's, but we don't teach people the middle ground. And marriage work. I think we talk about it's like a plant.
Okay, so walk me through the plant analogy. I think that makes sense to me, but for somebody listening, what goes into, how is a marriage like a plant?
Well, we could take the most beautiful plant, flowering, put it in a Waterford container, put it in the most beautiful room in the house. But if we don't water it, if we don't give it plant food, if we don't take it out into the sun, pretty soon the leaves are going to fall off, the flowers aren't going to bloom anymore, and the soil is going to get very hardened.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens in a marriage.
So what that jumps to my head is a plant needs maintenance, and a marriage needs maintenance too.
It does. We need to, water the plant. That's just working together, doing the things we need to do, which are getting pretty old now with this pandemic. Yep. We need to feed the plant. That's encouragement. You said something a while ago when we could all gather together, and you almost got a standing ovation. You said when you walk into the house, the first thing you do, you find your wife, you give her a hug and a kiss.
Yep.
And everyone was like, yes, because that sets the priority, what's most important, God first, the couple, then the children. And even if kids are hanging on your legs, that 10 seconds of hugging or kissing really just reestablishes the healthy plant, if you will.
Yeah.
It feeds.
Well, that's so true. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a good reminder to me to stick to that commitment of doing that. I'm doing a pretty good job at it, but I get home, I'll hang up my keys, I'll start taking off my shoes, and it's probably 15 seconds from when the door opens to when I can get to my wife, wherever she is in the house. And I have 4 kids, and every one of them is going to vie for my attention. And the first priority is not to worry about what we're eating, not to worry about what chores need to get done, not even to discipline or guide or help kids. It is to connect to my spouse first.
That's exactly right. And there's a sign that says, raising kids is like being pecked to death by a duck, because you can guarantee that the kids are going to suddenly need something. And so unless we see blood or broken bones, we just hang on for that 10 seconds of hugging or kissing, just to reestablish we're back together, we're in this together.
Yeah, that's good. And I think it also reminds us that there's a change. Sometimes we need an action to change a mental place. So if you're in a work mode, especially if you're working from home, your life is so commingled right now that's confused. But to say, okay, I'm leaving work behind. Now I'm going to my home life.
Mhm.
So did you want to say something else there, Denise? I also have a new question.
Go ahead.
So let's talk to couples right now who are sick of each other. It's not surprising you're sick of each other, but let's think through why we're fatigued in our relationships. What would you say to a couple who said, Denise, we don't know what to do. We just don't want to be by each other right now?
Well, we've lost the natural distancing. You know, kids get on a bus and go to school or to grandma's or preschool. We go to work, one person goes outside the home or both people do. So there's a natural break. And we're losing that natural break. So, and then things, I hear this a lot. If whoever is in charge of doing the work at home, they have a routine. And it's like both arms are free. Now all of a sudden they start doing what they need to do, or the person who's working in the house and somebody's always interrupting.
Yeah.
So it becomes a real agitation. So we need to kind of set those boundaries tighter. And whoever was in charge of doing the work at home, for example, it's a good idea not to give them suggestions. Not saying who's doing what, but they don't need help. They've been doing it well for quite a long time. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I have the ability to work outside the home. I come home and then I can be an assistant to the house manager, who in our family is my wife, right? We've said clearly her job description is she is in charge of this place and I am her servant, and I'm happy to be that. But when I'm home a lot more on a weekend or now in a pandemic, like I might be working from home, suddenly I'm interrupting her experience, her routines. I'm putting dishes away and I don't know where they go. And I'm going to put them in the wrong spot. So it's understandable that there will be confusion even as we're trying to help each other.
yeah, and we also need breaks. You know, you naturally would get a break. Although typically, I think it's like 4% of couples have date night before this even started, which is pathetic, really. There's that, because we need to take that plant out into the sun, and that's date night. So now we have to figure out how can we do that date night of sort of in a situation where you can't go to a restaurant. You can't.
Yeah.
So we have to start getting creative about how we do date night and be prepared for the kids to interfere. So there has to be a plan around that and some time to get that new system going.
Yeah. I tell you what, so my wife and I, we'd been reading a book on marriage, just trying to work and continue to improve our relationship. And one of the authors in the book, there was a couple that talked about they've had a date night every week for 31 years. And that just really inspired us and challenged us. And so we were living into that and doing a pretty decent job. Then the pandemic hit. And it has required us to be more creative. But I've noticed what we've had to say is, hey, tonight, we're not doing this other stuff. Tonight, we're going to set aside the chores, the activities, get the kids to bed. And it's just time to connect, whether it's playing a game or watching a movie together. But it's got to be us and not just stuff.
That's really true. You know, there's a point where we take the plant out into the sun and we actually look at the plant, not always run past it. And people do have to get creative, you know, make a picnic lunch, take it in the bedroom, take it outside, on the porch. If there's anybody that can be with the kids, you know, be able to go to a park if it's safe. It really is important. And we don't need to talk about the crisis 24/7 or the problems or the finances or all those things that confound our lives. It's okay to just have what we call normal conversations. And we've kind of forgotten how to do that.
Yeah. Well, the intensity of our lives has gone up so much in the last couple months, and we don't know what to do with that sometimes. And so we'll often just kind of ooze that into the conversations we have every day. I mean, if I bump into somebody as I'm on the street or walking or somebody I know, everybody wants to talk about the pandemic. And truthfully, we've lost, I really appreciate it. We've lost normal distancing. We've also lost normal conversation.
Oh, yeah, exactly
Because
right.
we don't have hobbies. We don't have other things we're doing. So we're kind of running out of stuff to talk about. And there's a tendency for our relationship with our spouse to be really intense when it doesn't need to be. What I think is we can actually take it back a little bit and just check in. You said something right before we started, before I hit record, that I think is really important for people to hear. Is that one of the reasons marriages struggle is because we're obsessed with being correct.
Yeah, if you're having an argument or a disagreement, first of all, we don't teach people how to argue well. We want to say, this is what I see, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I need. And then the other person can address whether that can be accomplished or not. But we get into this win or lose, who's right or who's wrong. And if in a couple, one person wins, you both have lost.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a compromise. It's really about compromise. And we do that at work pretty easily. And marriages work.
Mm-hmm.
This idea it isn't. So it's a win-win or it's a lose-lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think compromise is really important. One piece I've heard said, and I really love this line, is don't try to be correct, try to be curious. And so when I get into a conversation, I could try to prove that I'm right, but the conversation is going to go a lot better if I can try to understand why they think the way they think. And we're going to leave a lot happier if my spouse feels like I care about what she thinks, and I leave knowing that she genuinely is interested in how I feel.
It's a really good point too. We call it do-over. Sometimes we say something and it's just too sharp. So it's good for our spouse to say, and let's do a do-over. Say that again.
Yeah.
It's also okay to take a time out. We do this with kids. When we're going from a 0 to 10, and now we're getting voices and everything are getting into a 7, 8, a 9, a 10, where people are either yelling or shutting down or saying, just forget it, that kind of stuff. It's good to just take a time out and say, look, let's take a break, but also to say, let's come back to this situation tomorrow or in 3 hours, or because we can't solve everything all at once. And sometimes we need, I think it was one of the comedians said, women said, or husband said he didn't know he had a tone in his voice until he got married. So sometimes, men speak stronger or louder, and it immediately shuts women down. It has to do with socialization, which we're not going to get into. But so, yeah, if we need to take a little time out, take a time out.
Yeah.
Then come back to it.
That's great, Denise. The comedian you're talking about is Jerry Seinfeld. I just watched his special this last week on Netflix. If you're looking for something good to watch, it's very enjoyable. A good date night for you and your spouse. Watch Jerry Seinfeld on Netflix. Very entertaining. Find some creative things to do. We really do hope that your marriages grow in this season. We know that it's hard, but you will never get this opportunity to be so close to each other. So take some time away. Denise, what I heard you say is marriages work. You got to water the plant. You got to feed the plant. You got to take it outside and let it see some sunshine. You got to tend it. And if you do that, you'll leave it. The marriage will be better at the end.
That's right. It'll bloom like those flowers behind you.
Like these beautiful tulips. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. Looking forward to talking to you. I'm so grateful for my friend Denise. If you have the opportunity, thank her either through a message or on Facebook, and we'll stay connected in that way. Thanks, everybody.